And so now, verse 34, but when the Pharisees had heard that he had put the Sadducees to silence, they were gathered together. Then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him and saying. So now you get this expert in the law of Moses, this scribe who knows the Old Testament very well. Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Can you see what he's trying to do? He's baiting Jesus to get into a debate here to show how much smarter he is than Jesus when it comes to knowing the law. He's going to let Jesus pick a commandment that he thinks is really important, and then he's going to Bible bash with him and show him lots of verses that would show that other commandments might be more important. So you're thinking, wow, how do you get out of that one? Well, watch what Jesus does. Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment, and the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. 2 commandments.
This is really fascinating because how many commandments are there in the law of Moses?
613, and then if you were to boil those 613 specific parts of the law down to its simplest form, you would say, well, there are 10 commandments.
Which we get at Mount Sinai. And Jesus is giving us 2. Now notice he says this phrase, upon these 2 laws hang all the law and the prophets. The law is the law of Moses, or the 5 books of Moses, the Torah. Love God, love your neighbor, and if you do those things, you are loyally entwined with God, and you receive all the blessings of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
You know, Taylor, I wonder if there is great application to us today in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I think the same thing could be said. All of the procedures that happen in church, all of the programs, all of the policies, all of the practices, all of the commandments, all of the ordinances, everything that happens in the church could be hung on those 2 same commandments, those 2 same ideas of love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, might, mind, and strength, and love thy neighbor as thyself. Everything that we do in the church today, all of our efforts are built on those 2 things. It's pretty powerful when we keep things in that perspective. Otherwise, it's too easy to get off in the weeds of one of those 613 laws of Moses and think it's the most important aspect when God's the most important, and loving him and loving the neighbor. These should all be means to that end. And isn't it beautiful how you can take those 10 commandments, for instance, even if we boil from the 613 down to the 10, you look at those first 4, those are all focused on how you treat your relationship with God. No other gods before me, don't worship idols, don't take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, and remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. All of those are focused on your connection with God. And number 5 through 10 are all focused on how you treat people. Honor thy father and thy mother, don't kill, don't commit adultery, don't steal, don't lie or bear false witness, and don't covet. Everything really does boil down into these 2 parts. And then later on, we're going to find that if you're in the service of your fellow men, in chapter 25 of Matthew, you're only in the service of your God. So even if I'm keeping the 2nd commandment, that's an extension of how I keep the 1st commandment, how I love God. But we live in a world that wants to kind of reverse that order. Have you noticed that? A world that wants to emphasize loving your neighbor first. And then, if you've got any extra time or energy, then you can love God. There have been some beautiful conference talks given in the last few years about the importance of keeping that 1st commandment first. Love the Lord thy God first, and thy neighbor as thyself second.